Two immigrants, two children of immigrants, two racial identities, and a product of American ideals. How can minority groups find common ground with our experiences in the U.S.? A story about a Mexican immigrant and a Filipina immigrant. My family immigrated from Durango, Mexico when I was only 5 years old. Whittier, California became our permanent home in 2005. This is me. My name is Juan Huerta. This is a picture of my first day of school in the US, which now feels like a full circle moment as I pursue a higher education. This is Trisha. Trisha graduated from UC Davis with a bachelor's in political science. She's now a public servant at the California State Capitol. Aside from being good friends, Trisha and I share a lot in common when it comes to our identities as young immigrants. The Lim family immigrated from the Philippines when she was 10 years old. They fled the Philippines because of the poverty they were experiencing, and her parents wanted to provide a better education. Our parents left their home countries to provide better opportunities for us, but we both question if these opportunities are worth the detachment of our heritage and upbringing. One of the only things our families kept alive from our homeland is our food. Some days it feels like the only attachment to our heritage. We talk about suffering from imposter syndrome, anxiety, and stress because of the uncertainty that our legal status holds. I go on to interview Trisha and ask her personal questions about what it's like to be a young immigrant in the United States.
I am full Filipino. My last name is Lim, so I think my dad's side of the family has a little bit of Chinese in there. But I couldn't speak proper English when I moved here as a young kid, and these were my earliest memories of being bullied. If not for my inability to speak, it was the smelly school lunches I brought from home. In turn, I studied English meticulously to rid my accent, and I was always mad at my parents for not being American enough and packing me American lunch. But I point these two out because I didn't realize until I went to college that it's what sold me into this model minority myth. Appreciate this question, and as a part of the national reckoning on injustices, it's important that undermining solidarity is a vehicle of racial weaponization, right? The narrative that Asians have never shown solidarity for others, for example, during the Black Lives Matter movement, relies on this stereotype that we're docile and unwilling to be politically radical. This narrative is false, it's dangerous, and it perpetuates this racial wedge that has long used us against other communities. And we have to be mindful of this. You can be a better ally to API communities by including us in your anti-racism efforts, such as broadening your understanding of our experiences. I really recommend this book, Minor Feelings, An Asian American Reckoning by Kathy Park Hong. It's a fantastic read, and it shows a different perspective that I don't typically see when it comes to Asian American. Internalized racism towards Asian Americans becomes especially clear when our displays and expressions of patriotism are seen as flawed. At the height of the pandemic, conventional media used us as scapegoats. The amount of hate crimes towards my community proliferated. It didn't help that former presidential candidate Andrew Yang wrote an op-ed basically propelling this model minority myth that we must do more for our communities. And my mom culturally raised me to keep to myself and stay out of the way because she knew that we would always be treated as guests here in America. So I can relate to this upbringing. The lack of emotional support from my immigrant family used to fill me with resentment until I realized that their displays of love were acts of service. My mother always communicated her love and appreciation to me by cooking because she could not understand English well enough to help me with school. As I write this in the same room I've shared with my family since we immigrated here from the Philippines, I know now that for 11 years and counting, my strong sense to succeed was always rooted in this internalized obligation to repay my mother for her sacrifices. I received the greatest warmth from her when my love for reading and writing turned into early academic achievements in school. And she insistently taped my awards on the walls because it validated all her hard work. I'm a proud Asian American woman. I'm a product of a low-income immigrant family and now a first-generation graduate. I say each identifier with so much intention and grace, as there have been countless times that I thought it would be impossible to be all those things at once. And imposter syndrome gets to me more often than I would like. However, it's always important to remind myself that I shouldn't be ashamed when I'm the only female Asian American in the room. My lived experiences are just as valued as others. That pretty much concludes the interview questions, but again, I just want to thank everyone who have taken the time to listen. These projects are reminders that Asian Americans are not invisible in America, and it goes a long way.
After the interview finished, Trisha and I were able to reflect and think about the distress immigrant communities go through every day. We saw how similar we really are, even if society has portrayed us differently. It's important to speak up and stand up in order to create a space of unity, love, and equality for all.